You also take issue with Richard Dawkins' argument that God would have to be infinitely complex and therefore is highly unlikely.
Dawkins himself defines complex like this. He says a thing is complex if it has lots and lots of parts that are put together in a way that's unlikely just by chance. But of course, God isn't a being that's got parts. God is supposed to be a spirit. God doesn't have any parts. So it follows from Dawkins' own definition that God couldn't be complex. So I mean, it seems to me he's really sort of fallen off the boat at that point.
You also say that Richard Dawkins' argument is not only weak in argument, but it is unlovely and dispiriting in its conception of human nature. What does Christianity have to offer in this way that's different?
Well, according to the Dawkinsian way of looking at the world, human beings are just another animal with a peculiar way of making a living. According to the Christian way of looking at human beings are created in God's image, and they are created for fellowship with God, for fellowship with the first being of the universe. It's an almost over-the-top thought, but that's part of Christian belief. So the basic difference with respect to what people are like between these two could not be more stark. There's an enormous difference there.
It's an important one for people to understand, perhaps, as they assess the implications of different systems of belief, isn't it?
Yeah. And, I mean, for example, most people take morality really seriously. This, of course, fits in extremely well with Christian belief or any kind of theistic belief, Judaism or Islam too, but it doesn't fit with naturalism. I mean, where does this sort of moral requirement, where could that come from if naturalism, Dawkinsian naturalism, were true?
Do you find the fine-tuning argument a compelling one, the fine-tuning argument for God's existence?
These arguments, the problem with these arguments is they get very complicated. And I'm inclined to think there's something to the fine-tuning argument, but there are responses to it too, you know. I mean, so the idea is, well, the cosmological constants like the speed of light, the strong nuclear force and the weak nuclear force and so on, have to be very finely tuned in order for life of our sort to be possible. And they are. And it looks like that's more likely given theism. God would want, in creating the world, would create it in such a way, of course, that he could have human beings, than on chance. And I guess I'm inclined to think that's correct. But then there are various responses. For example, maybe there just are an enormous number of universes, all with the constants tuned in all different ways, you know, so that every possible combination shows up somewhere. Well, then there certainly would be one like this, and doesn't that blunt the argument?
Hard to prove that one, of course.
It's very hard to prove it, but it's just it's a maybe, you know. As a response to the fine-tuning argument, the person says, maybe that. Well, I don't quite know what to make of that. I don't think it's a very strong response. But even if the fine-tuning argument is of some strength, it's not strong enough to support the kind of belief that Christians actually have in God. I mean, that's much more, not just, it's more likely than not that there is such a person, but there really is. And it involves more like a personal sort of relationship than just a result of an argument.
There's a richness to it that goes beyond those sorts of arguments.
Right, right.